All right. So in the other video, I stopped when we were trying to find Pluto. So I actually really wanted you to look for it a little bit. So hopefully you did. But if you look right here on January 29th and you look over to the left, it's not there. It's here. This is when we discovered Pluto. The process from January 23rd to January 29th, 1930. So we've known about Pluto kind of before then. We thought it was there, but this was the evidence that we actually knew Pluto was there. All right, so what is Pluto? Now, I kind of hinted a little bit about it before. It spent most of its time beyond the Kuiper Belt. This is where, uh, comets and different things of that nature spend time at. But Pluto's, it's huge. It's not a comet. It's too big to be a comet. Comets are typically like, a couple miles inside, smaller than that. It does have a highly elliptical orbit, but it's steeply inclined. And actually, sometimes Pluto is closer to the Sun than Uranus, no, than Neptune, sorry. So, composition really doesn't match other planets. I mean, it's a perfect match for Kuiper Belt objects, but it's huge. So, the debate really got started in about 2006 concerning whether or not Pluto's a planet. Well, why did it get started this year in particular? Because in 2005 we discovered Eris. And up until that point in time, we never really had a definition of a planet. With technology getting better and better, we have more understanding of how the world works. We're able to see things deeper into space. The Hubble telescope. We can see things clearer, deeper in space than what we could from the Earthbound astronomical observatories. So we're starting to find more and more things, and we never defined what a planet was. Eris was discovered in 2005. It was bigger than Pluto, so if Pluto's a planet, then Eris should be a planet as well too. So there was a debate that began, and that debate, was to come up with a definition. Now, the original proposal, the one proposal stated that a planet needed to be defined as a celestial body that has sufficient mass for its self-gravity to overcome rigid body forces so that it assumes a hydrostatic equilibrium shape. Translation, it's spherical. And B, it is in orbit around a star and is neither a star nor a satellite of a planet. So what that means is that it has to be in orbit around a star. It can't be in orbit around another planet. So you think about Jupiter, Io, Ganymede, Callisto, Europa. Those are fairly large objects. They're spherical. Actually, most of the planets are all spherical, or most of the moons. But they're in orbit around another object that is not a star. So it has to be in orbit around the star. So now, if this proposal would have been accepted, Ceres, Pluto, and Eris all would have been considered planets. However, there was a amendment stipulation, a little quasi-proposal, whatever we want to call it. A celestial body that is in orbit around the sun has sufficient mass for its self-gravity to overcome rigid body forces so that it assumes a nearly round shape, and it has cleared the neighborhood around its orbit. Now, what does that mean? In Pluto's orbit, there are other objects in orbit, just like there is around, in Pluto's orbit around the sun. So if this would to be accepted, Pluto, Eris, and Ceres, which is the largest object in the asteroid belt, they don't clear the neighborhood. Because of that, they're no longer a planet. What we call them are dwarf planets. So Ceres is the largest object in the asteroid belt. It's only about 950 kilometers in diameter. We thought it might have been Johann Bode, who was an astronomer, predicted that there was a planet there, but Eris was discovered again in 2005. This is actually, at that time, was the largest dwarf planet. First spotted in 2003. If you actually look at the photo, you can see it has a moon called Dysnomia. It is 3 times as far away from the sun as what Pluto is. So if you think back to those scale activities we were talking about, how if the Earth was 1 inch in diameter, the moon, is 30 inches away, Pluto is like 8.5 miles away. You're looking at about 25 miles from the sun, or something like that, to where we're at with Aries. So again, that possible death planet. This is what started the whole debate. Now, there's actually two more that we know of now. The first is called Hawaii, and the second is called Makemake. So I'm going to give you a little bit of information about them. So Hawaii, and I might even be getting the name wrong on that one, originally designated 2003 EL61, so this was also discovered, they're thinking back early on around 2003, 2004, but at that point in time they didn't know, that it was a dwarf planet. So, given some little bit of information, so I said, this is kind of a neat website here with the solar system exploration, is that you can play with it and actually look around and see, oh, what does it look like? If you notice, it's not spherical either. So how was it formed? This is the one that really gets me. The radius is 385 miles, so diameter is, 760, 770 miles. A day is 4 hours, but a year is 285 Earth years. So, folks, you ain't celebrating a birthday there. Now, if we look at the other one, Makemake, which I just love the name of that one, we get some information about Makemake. It's pretty close, 305 Earth years, though. Again, we're not celebrating too many birthdays there, but we can see what it looks like here. And I can zoom in just like I could zoom in on the other one, but I can move around and I can see with it. So again, there's a lot of great resources out there for you. Just kind of got to play with them and find them. Now, since we're talking about, the Kuiper Belt and all that, there are other celestial bodies out there. So we have asteroids, and these are little rocky bodies that orbit the sun. We do have an asteroid belt, most of them between Mars and Jupiter. So, the Star Wars where it's like, never tell me the odds, successfully navigating an asteroid belt. They actually do exist. Asteroid belts do exist. They are out there. Comets, these are dirty snowballs. Now, what's interesting about comets is that one of the big misconceptions, we think that tail right here is actually going behind it as the comet is moving. Well, it kind of makes sense. If I'm running with like a streamer, the streamer is going to be going behind me. Well, that's not actually what happens. With comets, this comet could be moving this way, but the sun is over here. The tail of a comet is always pointing directly away from that star that it's orbiting. So it could be moving, in an elliptical orbit around it, but the tail is always going to be pointing away from it. Now, meteoroids. These would always confuse me because you have a meteor, meteorite, and meteoroid. So a meteoroid is a relatively small. You might think a boulder is not that small, but when we're talking planets, boulders is a small object. But it can be also a grain of, up to a grain of sand, as small as. So it's something that got chipped off of an asteroid, because asteroids, we're talking miles in diameter sometimes. If the meteoroid's in space, we call them meteoroid. Meteor is a meteoroid that strikes the Earth's atmosphere. A meteorite is a meteor that survives the atmosphere and reaches the ground. So it's three different names of the same object depending upon what happens with it. So this is how I remember it. Asteroids are in space. Great video game, but, classic. So asteroid, meteoroid, both in space. Meteor are meteor showers. When you look and there's meteor showers and you see them zipping across the sky at night, that's the object in the Earth's atmosphere, sometimes usually burning up within the atmosphere. A meteorite, like a termite, if a termite hits your house, you're kind of SOL. It's going to be a big pain in the butt to clean up and take care of. A meteorite, well, if a meteorite hits your house, it's going to be a big pain in the butt to kind of clean up. And actually, this does happen. There have been cases where a gentleman was sitting in a chair, got up, went to make a sandwich, came back, and in that time, a meteorite went through the roof, went through his house, and struck where he was. There's actually have been people that have died through this. A gentleman was at a party, New York City skyscraper, sitting there, and just happened to get hit with a meteorite. And it was like a bullet, and it killed them. People will go out and they'll see their cars just dented, and so this is something where it could happen randomly at any point in time, at any given moment, and it just, who knows? So, something to keep mindful of. So how do we know all of these different things about space? Well, we send up, satellites. Now, Natural satellites were sometimes called moons, like Ganymede, our moon, or La Luna, however you want to call it. But artificial satellites are things that we put up there. The Hubble Space Telescope is the satellites that we use, and there are some that we send out to other planets. So you look at the one that, think back to Venus, that was something that we made, that we created. Well, one of your assignments, one of your projects that you've already been learning about is Voyager. Voyager is a piece of technology that we created, that we sent out into space. And on Voyager, there was what was called a golden record. Now, that golden record contains all kinds of information about who we are, what we are, what we do, what we love, what we're afraid of, whatever. And it also has a galactic roadmap on it. Don't forget. So if an alien species were to find it, they can look on the record by looking at the pulsars and kind of get an XYZ interdimensional plane. And hey, here we are. Come by and say hi. Now, talk about issues, whether or not we should have done that. So there's a lot of different things that you can do with astronomy. You've seen the art integrations, you've seen this, but for engineering, this is a great activity you can do with your students. Is I want you to design a space or a spaceship, or I want you to design a satellite. What kind of information are you going to collect? What's the goal? What's the problem? So if you start thinking about an engineering activity, I want to go to Mars. Well, what's the goal? I want to see if we're going to be able to sustain life. So I might need to be able to look for maybe a landing space. What would I need to have there? Or maybe I would need to see like, oh, is there going to be water there? So what is going to be contained within that satellite? What is the mission of that satellite that we would need to have created? So maybe you draw a picture. Maybe you have them create it with Legos. So this is a great engineering activity which you could then go into your students with to, well, maybe we're going to go send this into space. Maybe we want to take photographs. We want to, get information back from the other planets. And now we put our own golden record on, which is one of your upcoming assignments, is you're going to have a golden record assignment. I want you to create your own golden record based upon, you know, 2020. If you look at the original golden record, that was back in Voyager in the 70s. If you look at what has changed in the past 50 years, so we can call it Golden Record Volume 2 if you want to, the newest greatest hits. So you have the directions for that. I want you to kind of go through and do that. So these are again talking about the rising star goals, the issues. We've already kind of talked about this. Voyager, this is where we got a lot of these informations, but again, just kind of giving you the sites as well as the slides for these. So look forward to chatting with you more, and I hope you're having a wonderful day.